My dear brothers and sisters, we continue to listen to the mysteries that were unfolding after the resurrection of Jesus. In Luke's gospel, we heard earlier the walk to Emmaus and how the two disciples were dejected, were sad, and they were leaving Jerusalem and going to Emmaus when Jesus appeared to them and he listened to their story. He asked them, "What have you heard?" And this line is again repeated in today's gospel. The two disciples recounted what had taken place on the way and how Jesus was made known to them in the breaking of bread. So the theme for today's homily is, "You are witnesses of these things." And each of you can look back on your lives and write your gospels. And what will you write there in your gospels? Obviously, you will write how God has worked in your lives. Just as the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these tell the stories, the same story of Jesus, but from each different perspectives. And we remember when we started Bible study, a little bit about the differences. And so, when this last line of Mark says, "You are witnesses of these things," we are invited to tell our own gospel story. And what is the meaning of the word gospel? It is nothing but evangelion, or the good news. The good news how God has come into our lives and has brought us to this point in time. From wherever we are, today's gospel also speaks of his name being preached to all nations. And on this Zoom Mass, we are people gathered from the United States, from Canada, from UK, from India, from Australia, and from New Zealand. And we have been coming together every Saturday or Sunday for the last 13 months, ever since we went into lockdown. So the words of the gospel are being lived. We are truly coming together from all over the world, people from all nations. Many months, sometimes churches open, people went back to churches. Now churches are again closed, people have come back. And the good news of God continues to be spread through the technology that we have today. And therefore, it's important for us to begin writing our own gospel story. Some of you are in the habit of writing a journal, which is very good, very helpful, because our minds tend to forget very easily all the good things that God has done in our lives. We remember it maybe for a day or two, and then the next pressing problem, the next difficulty, the next challenge that we are facing tends to occupy most of the real estate of our brain. And neuroscience tells us that this tendency of the brain to stick to negative things is not our fault. It is an evolutionary trait. Because the body had to protect itself, the brain is in such a way that all the things that threaten the body, that tends to take our utmost focus. But we have gone a long way from being in caves and getting frightened of tigers or lions attacking us. And yet, in our genes, this is still there. And so we have to make a deliberate effort to move away from all the negative things that our brain keeps focusing on. And we can tell our brain, okay, thank you. Thank you for this, but now I'm going to focus on something positive. And when we write our story, or when we record our story as an oral history, we are recording how God worked in our lives. And all of us know that not all times were good times or happy times. A few weeks back, I spoke of the valleys that we have to go through in order to reach the mountains. But yet, we can look back and see how God has helped us through difficult times and brought us to where we are now. And so I invite you to either open up a file and a Word document and keep typing out all the good things that have happened in your lives. And you will very soon see how the pages fill up. I have been doing this now for the last about 15 years, and I've reached about 200 pages in one Word document. And I keep going back periodically, and then I realize there are so many things that I've forgotten. And also I've written sometimes the difficult patches that I've gone through, and I say, my goodness, God helped me through this and that. And so when we write our own gospel story, we are giving praise to God. We are giving witness to what God has done in our lives. But I want you to go one step further. Besides writing it, even when we go through our everyday life and good things happen to us, I invite you to share that. Maybe you're praying for a health miracle. Maybe you're praying for your finances. Maybe you're praying for someone who is sick, or praying for your own healing. When that happens, pick up the phone and share that good news. You know, I want to share this little miracle with you. Today, we have so many means of communications. Write 2-3 lines and put it on WhatsApp. Hey, God has done this for me. Or send it on an email, or make a voice file and share with people what God is doing. Our world today seems to be so full of negative things. And no doubt we are still in the pandemic. And there's lots that we have to go through. But there's lots of good things that are happening. And the newspapers are not going to report that, because that does not sell. Negative news sells. But if each of us can be an apostle, an evangelist, and spread the good news which is happening in our own lives, as I said, through a phone call, through WhatsApp, through Twitter, through Facebook, hey, this is what has happened to me. Who knows, what you write might bring hope into the dying embers of someone who is discouraged. Who knows, it might create enthusiasm and a feeling to go on living for someone who's at the end of the road. Who knows, what you write, what you share, the good news might inspire people to then do the same. And then we will come to know that, yes, God is in this world, God is acting in this world, even though the things might not seem all good around us. Today, we are celebrating Celine's 90th birthday. And a birthday is always a good time to look back on our lives and see how God has taken us. like Celine, Franco, Malcolm, and so many others in this group, okay, we all trace our ancestry to the village of Kunchali, or to the village to the Bardes, or to Goa, or to India. And today we are all spread all over the world. There's so much to be grateful to God for. There's so much to be thankful to God for. If I remember right, I think my dad was the best man for Celine and Franco's wedding many years back. And it was so nice for him to reconnect with them when he came here to Boston. But these miracles happen, and they happen often. And we need to bring them to our consciousness that there is so much good going on. Because the brain will tend to take us to the negative things. And so it's an exercise that we do. And then we will truly become happy, joyful people. Our attitude will change. We will truly begin to reflect the Easter spirit of joy and hope and resurrection. It is an exercise that we need to do, and especially during these days as we are in the Easter season, right up to Pentecost, let us ask for this grace to be optimistic, joyful, enthusiastic, no matter what is going on. Because we know that there is a God in heaven who has taken care of us, and he will continue to take care of us. And therefore, he invites each one of us to be witnesses. And so, as I close today's homily, I invite you to be a witness to what God is doing in your life. And sometimes we may think, what difference is it going to make? You know, my little story or sharing with someone. We don't know what difference it's going to make. You'll remember the story of the fisherman who was walking along the beaches walking from Baga to Kalangut to Kandoli to Sinkeri. And what was he doing? All the jellyfish had washed ashore. He was picking up each of the jellyfish and throwing it into the sea. And there was this guy in suit and coat who came there, and he said, "Young man, what are you doing?" So he said, "This jellyfish has been brought onto the shore in the high tide, and if I don't put it back, they will die." So then the man said, "But what difference does it make? There are thousands of jellyfish." The young fisherman bent down, picked another jellyfish, threw it into the sea, and said to the man, "It will make a difference to that one." My dear brothers and sisters, we do not know how our witness will make a difference. But we do know that whatever small thing we can share to the world might change someone's life. And so you are called to be a witness.